It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are going to talk about Canelo versus Crawford, and we are going to look at it from all angles, from behind the scenes, from before the fights where they had the press conferences, to after the fights where we've seen multiple interviews and other press conferences. But if you want access to all of it, you're going to need to subscribe with your money, because some of this will be behind a paywall. John, how the heck are you?
Good. I'm just thinking about all the angles we're going to be looking at this. We're going to be using non-Euclidean geometry.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I wonder how many people got that. Hint, it's from H.P. Lovecraft people.
So let me start this with your thoughts on the fights and on the production and the overall delivery of those fights.
Well, okay, we're going to have to break them down by the categories you laid out there. One is I didn't watch any of the other fights this weekend, except the Netflix event. I did not watch the UFC Noche, and I'm upset I overslept, or I slept through my alarm in a way, so I missed that as well. So all I watched was the Netflix one, and I didn't watch the undercard. I didn't watch the prelim. The undercard to the undercard was on the previous nights that no one watched apparently. So I watched the event. I guess I'll go with the fights first. The main event was pretty entertaining. You know, is it an all-time great? No, but it was a very entertaining, masterful performance by Bud. I think closer than some people kind of presented as, because I thought, I should say, Bud clearly won the fight. I think you agree. Bud clearly won the rounds.
Yes.
But some of the earlier rounds were close enough that I thought the judges would have gave Canelo the nod. And it's only in the last 3 rounds, I became certain Bud definitely won it, because he took over at the end of the fight and cemented, especially the championship rounds, the 10th round on, he cemented those, because there was a little comeback by Canelo in the middle as well. So the fight, the main event, was very entertaining, very interesting. The undercard was 2 of the fights left a lot to be desired. And that is the Caleb Walsh. I don't know, we know why he was on the co-main, right? And there's no reason he should have been on the co-main. He's just, you have a massive fight like this and he's not at that level that he should be on the co-main. And then the first fight of the night, and I watched the whole thing. The guy from, I can't remember his name, from Saudi Arabia that fought the other Crawford. I was joking with people, oh my God, they're going to have Crawford fight twice tonight. That fight shouldn't have been on the card. That was obviously done just to please the Saudis, that they put the Saudi Arabian fighter that, that's not at that level at all and should not be on the card. So those two fights were stinkers. Let's be honest. The Christian Mubili, how do you pronounce that guy's name again? Umbili. That was entertaining as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
That was extremely entertaining. That was a great fight. We could have done one more. I would have cut one fight out. So of the fights, the undercard, the middle of the undercard was amazing. The other 2 fights, the undercard, were not that impressive. Were kind of snorefests. And then the main event was, it delivered. It really delivered. In fact, I didn't expect it to deliver as well as it did. So on the fights overall, because you don't really care about the undercard for big boxing matches, you got to give it a high grade because the main event delivered. Now, on the broadcast team, I'll say this. During the fights, I really like John Anik.
Yeah, me too.
He was great, I thought. I was, again, surprised. He was an ace on there. And I thought Andre Ward was excellent, and Kellerman was excellent as well, too. The team was excellent during the fights. In between the fights, Max said some stupid shit. He's been on a bad streak this week of brown nosing, so he was not as good. And also when they went to the desk, holy crap, that was some terrible stuff as well. And it's kind of strange coming on when you have Dana White complaining about how in boxing there's a fight, then there's a podcast, and what do they do for this? There's a podcast. The 2 members of Tool came out and played for some goddamn reason.
Yep.
What the hell was that about? I mean, the TV broadcast left a lot to be desired. The spacing, the length of the show was ridiculously long. That wasn't good. But the fights themselves, again, the production of the fights, the announcing was top notch, was just excellent. It's in between the fights was a snore fest again. And finally, the production, I think, of the arena was amazing. The arena looked great.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a mixed bag on everything. I think they also, they made mistakes by having it stretched. The event went on way too long. The celebrity cameos, that's a common in boxing, so you can't get too upset. But overall, I thought, I guess it's all dependent on what the main event, and the main event really delivered, and I would have been better off skipping the undercard and coming into the main event. I made the mistake of checking out the whole Netflix broadcast. So that's my overall review. What was yours? What did you think of the card?
First off, I need to note for those listening that when John says the undercard, he's meaning the fights that were on the main card, but that were not the main or the co-main event, because there was an actual undercard. So that's what. Well,
the undercard usually in MMA we kind of use slightly different terminology now because the UFC's introduced this. But the undercard basically means the main event, and then everything under that is the undercard. And usually, then the prelims are the ones that are not aired.
Right.
The unaired prelims that become before the main card.
We got all of that. So the event overall was like 12 hours. I mean, it felt like it was 12 hours. The walkout for the main event was not until after 1 Eastern AM. So that's ridiculous. For me, the commentary team, Andre Ward, who is normally, in my opinion, pretty much flawless, had a lot of dead air. He left a lot of quiet space, and his delivery, in my opinion, wasn't as smooth as it normally is. Kellerman was, in my opinion, awful. And when he went in there and did that the post-fight interview, and those long pregnant pauses like he wasn't prepared with his interview questions, annoyed the shit out of me. His you gotta get ass to give ass, or whatever that comment was, it was, it was obviously a callback to
that's Tony that used to say that.
Yeah. That was really dumb and didn't fit the moment, and it should have been left, on the cutting room floor, to use some terminology that John knows. Yeah. But I didn't like the commentary team so much. I thought John Anik shined, but somebody replied to me for a post that I made. First of all, I get that they're supposed to look at the camera, but I felt that they did their best to sort of exclude John Anik from commentary they were making amongst themselves. They frequently didn't respond to him, and I did watch the event in its entirety. So I noticed things like that. And when that person, Steph Boyar 3 made that post that I commented on, and it sort of went viral, I said that they weren't used to being outshined by a consummate professional who does his homework. Because to me, it felt like Andre Ward hadn't really prepared like he normally does. And listen, we all know that Andre Ward sometimes comes to the table unprepared. He's terrific at calling the action as it happens, because that's what he's best at. But preparedness for historical fact for each of the fighters is not his forte. Max Kellerman just sounded like shit to me. I just have a hard time with Max.
I kind of disagree, because like I said, during the fights, I thought Max was pretty good, especially when we got to the main event earlier. Some of the other ones, when he kept bringing up the BMF title and stuff, was kind of absurd in the week. But during the fights, I thought he was pretty good. It's in between when he did his interviews, I thought, man, he really is kind of lost it and rusty. The one part I saw that clip that they're looking away from John, and John says, "You can look at me." I took that as that they're so used to working on a booth with the cameras right at them, they look at the camera, and he's just telling them, "Hey, we're set up like we're set up like the UFC. We can talk amongst ourselves."
That's what Yes, I get that part. But what I was referring to was the way that they sort of did them throughout the whole broadcast. It felt like there was a little click between the two of them, and John wasn't part of it. And maybe it was awkwardness because, you know, Jim Lampley was supposed to be in there. Remember, they announced Jim Lampley would be calling this. And, you know, someone suggested to me that maybe there was some awkwardness there because they were expecting someone that they'd worked with multiple times in the past, and that didn't happen. And so they weren't used to John Anik. I am open to all suggestions, but when I made my post, it was a little bit of a combination of knee-jerk and tongue-in-cheek, you know, because everyone knows how much John Anik prepares for every single broadcast he does, UFC or otherwise. He is like neurotic about it. I know, I've interviewed him, and he spends weeks and he handwrites his cards because he says that it makes him remember better if he writes them out, his research. So that's what that was all about. But I do want to note that I actually know that they're supposed to look at the camera. But in between fights, I feel like it's okay if they sort of look at each other. But hey, you know, like I say, I'm open to all reasonable debate on that and reasonable replies, not the "you fucking retard" or anything like that that they were lobbing at me in the
I apologize
comments.
for that kind of language.
But other than that, I did like it. I loved the main event. I thought it was terrific. I thought it was a very good fight. Like you, I thought it was closer than they were making out. Like some people were saying that Canelo might have won 4 rounds. I gotta disagree there. I thought he won more than that.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, the thing too is Skipper's scorecard. You know, he had, and maybe, you know, those were really close rounds, a couple of first ones, but I'm sitting there looking at it, I go, there's no way the judges are giving Bud all these rounds. There's just no way. Just the way they play it out. And then, you know, when you look at the scorecard, you know, we were right that the judges didn't. And that's not to say Skipper's supposed to score it on his own, but
right.
But the people watching at home are looking at Bud running away with it. They're going to think, oh, it's one-sided. And at that time, you just know that the scorecards actually are much tighter. One last thing on John Anik, I'll say, though. I like him for UFC broadcasts, but I think I hope they keep him in boxing. If he ever wants to drop one, I mean, I'm sure UFC fans won't be happy to do this, but I think I prefer him in boxing. He really fits that, and he really fits just the way the broadcast booth works. So they're much more reserved usually in boxing.
Yes.
Instead of having people get very excited, and it fits his style better. That everything's much more straightforward instead of having, you know, the crew Rogan, everybody going nuts next to you every once in a while.
Yeah, I did hate the pacing. And one last thing I wanted to comment on, and I also want to get comment from you on this, is I feel like Turkey is like a carny. Like him pulling every major star celebrity he could and then claiming there was some big announcement. Like, did we ever get that Mark Wahlberg major announcement? Because I don't recall getting it. But he has this, like, it's beyond normal boxing what we're getting with Turki Al-Sheikh. It's definitely an ode to himself. Like, he loves to be the center, and I feel like he does that to be the center. So I got to get your take on Turki Al-Sheikh being P.T. Barnum Jr.
Well, I mean, sometimes I think he wants to make announcements, not ready, because he'll say something and then nothing comes of it. It's like he's just like a kid. He has to make the announcement. He has to be kind of the center of attention. It's all built. It's also weird because it is a cult of personality. It comes from a kingdom that's named after a family that runs a country. The country's not an ethnic group of people. It's a state named after a family that runs a monarchy. He's a powerful figure there who, you know, basically has, power granted him by the king to do whatever he wants. And, you know, there's all these stories of, you know, prisons with a wing dedicated to him. So he's a guy that things just happened that he wants. So there's a lot of stuff in this card, I think, that was not good for the card, not good for, you know, what TKO is probably trying to do, like having that young Saudi fighter on the first fight of the night. There's no reason when you're broadcasting the rest of the world that has to be there, but that was obviously probably done to keep people in Saudi Arabia happy. I'm also curious if one of the reasons the stretch so late, I wouldn't be shocked, is that he wanted it to go late instead of having a streamlined event, which I'm sure, Netflix would have probably preferred because I think they would have got more viewers. But he wanted to stretch because when it started at like 1 a.m. Eastern time for the main event, that's 8 a.m. in Saudi Arabia. Was he stretching out just to make sure that people wake up in Saudi Arabia to watch it?
That makes
sounds
a lot
absurd.
of sense, actually.
I mean,
it does not sound absurd at all. And I never thought of that until you just said it.
Yeah, you think about, it's absurd. There's all this tens of millions riding on it. But again, you're talking to these people that this is their money to do on a whim, what they want to do. And would he want to stretch this out? Would he tell people, we do not want to start until my friends in Saudi Arabia can wake up and see my glorious achievement in the morning?
Oh, man. That you know what? It makes a lot of sense to me. Absolutely not absurd, John. All right. We are going to actually dive into what we're here for, and that's for John's analysis of some of the business aspects and things like that. So, first question. Ring announced that the event had sold out the arena, and during the broadcast, Michael Buffer announced that the crowd set a new record for attendance with basically 71.5 thousand in attendance. The gate was a reported 47.3 million, which is the third biggest gate in history. Was this the attendance / gate that was expected?
I mean, you have to be. I don't know what the price total was, and we should go check out boxing tickets and Fred Garvin to see what the original was priced at. Although I think they only released sections of tickets at a time, so it's impossible probably to calculate, and I'm sure a lot of them were bought up ahead of time. But I think they got to be pleased. I don't know what they would have priced it at. That's an enormous gate, enormous attendance. Third biggest gate ever. It's a huge achievement. So I can't believe they were shooting for more. Maybe they were shooting for a little bit more. My understanding too is, and I don't know if this is true, but that it wasn't a true sellout. That there was a small pockets of tickets available, and maybe they just declared those seats are no longer available, and that way it's a sellout. But even then, it's like so close, 71,000 attendance, that you're talking, what, a few hundred seats, maybe 1,000 seats maximum. They probably took off the table to make sure it was labeled as a sellout. So, worst case scenario, you're in a 70-some seat arena, you're 99% sold out. So, on all fronts, that's you got to give them credit as a success.
Okay, so the only caveat with the ticketing would have been those seats. Now, Fred Garvin and Rob Joyner and some boxing tickets noted that the seats that were pulled were some of the more expensive ones in the lower bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there was, Fred Garvin brings this up a lot. The boxing tickets account discusses this. There's a lot of people that, not a lot, a handful of people that bring this up, but and often has to do with, TKO's ticket selling procedures. One is they release limited amount of seats at a time. They talked about it in the Mark Shapiro talked about it recently at that conference. How they want a high yield on the tickets. They only release a certain number so they can make sure the price stays high. So that's one thing. And then also, a lot of brokers might have bought this, and that's what it sounded like in the beginning. Some of the people following the ticket sales, that it looked like they were bought up by brokers. And then the second market was selling a lot of the tickets. And so there might be some little fuckery in the tickets. I mean, I would not be shocked if to make sure that the tickets were taken off the market, that Turki Al-Sheikh in the Riyadh season, and his men went in and said, we will guarantee these brokers your price. That way you buy them up. And they might be losing some money on the resales because the price has dropped. I wouldn't be shocked at any of that, but still, even to say if that's true, it's not the close to 50 million in ticket sales. It's not going to, it's going to take a little bit off the real amount that was sold, but it's still going to be the third biggest event gate ever in boxing. I don't think there's any way that's not going to happen. But, between the possibility that Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to guarantee that there'd be this big success. And the fact that Endeavor has mastered this art of releasing limited number of tickets and getting brokers to pick up large numbers of them. So there's just a small number, a scarcity. They create scarcity constantly on the tickets. It's hard to follow the ticket sales for these events.
Now, this event did 41 million views according to Netflix. Tyson Paul did 108 million views. What do you make of that? And do you consider Canelo versus Crawford a success viewer-wise?
Well, I think it was a success. I mean, still 41 million worldwide is a large number of viewers. What was in the United States?
24
million. That's a large number in the US. Now, I think it's actually, I guess you could rate it kind of a failure, though. I think it should be a disappointment. And if they would have had the main event come on earlier, I bet you there'd easily be 5 to 10 million more Americans watching. So it would have been a much bigger success because they dragged this event out so long. And I know that for a fact because my girlfriend, her and her friends were staying up there going to watch it. She was going to surprise me by telling me watching the fight and tell me who won. And then they got tired and quit because it was going on so long. So there are people I know that did that were they were going to watch it and they didn't watch it. So because of the length of the show, and I know there's another friend had a house party, people were watching it, and I think some of the people left because it was just taking so long. And this is on the West Coast. He had a house party in LA and they couldn't take it anymore. So that's a long event. So in some ways, I'd say that's where their failure was. This could have been a much more successful event, 5 to 10 million. Now you're never going to do as much as Tyson Paul, which is a spectacle. And I know people are comparing like, oh, it shows you that this is a failure compared to Tyson Paul. But Tyson Paul is a freak show fight, and it drew a ton of viewers. But in that sense, Tyson Paul was a much more successful event. That's true. And I think Paul Davis will probably draw more eyes because, the casuals will just tune in because it's something it's a freak show. But at the same time, look at the gate differences. Tyson Paul did 18 million at the gate. This did close to 50 million. So one is generating much more money from people that are willing to pay to see it than the other. And that kind of right there explains why pay-per-view exists. Because there are events that maybe are not as appealing to the extreme casual audience, except for like the every once in a while the Pacquiao versus Mayweather type fight, where it just crosses over to everybody. But most events, even the big ones, they don't appeal to the wide audience like a Super Bowl or a football game does. It's boxing fans or MMA fans that are willing to pay money. The harder core fans, the less casual fan that's always willing to dip in to pay for these things is what generated the revenue. And so, and that makes me wonder, just this event alone is like we should be thinking about this as we see the UFC moving away from a pay-per-view model, because UFC success in the future, it no longer might be as much dependent on putting on fights that are appealing to a crowd that's a fan base that's willing to pay for it, as much as it is to cast a wider net and appeal to everybody. And that means, perhaps less Anderson Silvas and more Kimbo Slices, because one might get everybody to dip in their pockets and get 1 million people to buy them in a big fight. The other one might get several million people to tune them in for free. And so that's something to keep in mind with when they're moving into free TV, as we've seen now with Netflix.
Sanctioning belts, they were nowhere to be seen. Instead, the focus was on that extraordinary diamond-encrusted golden belt that Turki had crafted and the Super Bowl-style ring that would go with it. What are we to make of this?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the ring done by the WBC? Wasn't it their Super Bowl-style ring they made for it instead of their belt? And the belts were present. They just didn't get a spotlight at all because WBA came at the end, and I think they were in the ring at the end of the fight. But you're right. There was no advertising on the poster for them. They didn't bring in the sanctioning organizations in the lead up. They had some of the belts on the table for the pressers, but there was a bare minimum of the alphabet belts presented. And I think what that means is two things are going on. One is for Bud and Canelo, the belt still means something, so they couldn't get rid of them completely because for those guys it means something. But I think for TKO and Turkey Al Sheik and Ring Magazine, their plan is they were trying to minimize as much as possible as to put the spotlight on their Ring Magazine belt, because eventually they've I mean, it's no secret, they've talked about it. They want to go to a one belt system where they control the belt and they only use their belt. And I think this was, they weren't successful in making this only their belt, but it was the first step in what they're doing about having it focused solely on their belt. In this case, the Ring Magazine belt for the Riyadh season events.
Aiden Ross, we got to talk about him for a minute because at the last minute, he got a phone call from someone advising him to change his $1 million bet from Canelo to Crawford. And there is video proof of this, that it happened before the event because it was during his live stream. Many are thinking that it was one of the casinos. Do you think that there will be or should be an investigation into that by the Gaming Commission?
Well, first of all, I got to know, I don't know who the fuck Aiden Ross is.
He's a big-time influencer, one of the biggest in the world. And he's also Dana White's favorite.
Is real? I didn't even know that. I don't think I've ever heard of him. I saw the clip. I didn't know who the fuck the guy was. This is the sure sign is, I'm in my 50s, people. I don't follow every influencer, and I've tuned out a lot of them. So, I mean, there should be maybe an investigation, but I'm less suspicious. I had a thinking. My weird thought was that perhaps the other person in the other line had spoken to someone like Usyk, that basically, because there were several boxers that kind of guaranteed that Bud's going to win, and maybe they spoke to someone knowledgeable and just said, "Listen, you got to change your bet. This guy's confident that Bud's going to win," and I think that's a possibility as well. I would imagine, but if it's someone else, I don't know, based on what the betting lines are going, whatever, Tony has to change his bet or, having inside tip, which suggests it's fixed. And I don't think this was fixed at all based on what happened. Even if I think that's unlikely as hell, yeah, just the optics of it demands maybe at least some sort of minor investigation just to clear the air.
The media section, let's talk about that, because in the lead up to the fight, there was a notorious freeze out of the mainstream media and legacy boxing media. So Dan Rafael posts this tweet. He posted this Twitter picture of the media seats, and they were practically in the nosebleeds. And also there was a notorious lack of media presence. Like all the media seats looked empty except for his and one other one that was like 3 rows down. So I guess I want to ask you what you think of that is, because I mean, they should have just gone ahead and told him to cover it from home with where they were located.
Yeah, I think this is the future for TKO and the relation with the media. Dana White's talked about it. Remember about getting rid of the media section or moving it away, and we invite influencers. And this is kind of the example of that. They're the media section. They're the prime real estate around the cage. They're going to sell and make money on. They're moving them further away. I'm sure they want some media because they like the extra coverage. They want some press there, but they don't feel the need to put them up close like they did in the past to get actual coverage. And I'm sure they're saving a lot of their tickets for influencers. But my only take is they've warned us they're going to do this, and this seems to be the direction they're headed. They're honoring their word. Dana White was truthful about how he's going to treat the media in the future.
Max Kellerman, he was pushing the BMF belt several times during the broadcast, saying that boxing needed this. What's your take?
I don't get what the hell he was talking about, to tell you the truth. I mean, the big complaint is, and Max has talked about this too, like, oh, boxing's broken because there's so many titles. And then you want to introduce a new title? Mm-hmm. You make fun of rightfully so, that there's an interim title and diamond titles and all these different silver, all these different belts. And yet you want to introduce another one? on top, another made up pointless belt. The BMF title is stupid as hell in the MMA. I mean, I don't get why. The appeal was that it was funny when Masvidal and Nate Diaz were going to fight for it, based on one comment by Nate Diaz. Is a one-time gimmick that's now, I think, just well past its lifespan. Lived well past lifespan. And I do not understand Max Kellerman's constant bringing up, unless, this was something he talked to someone from TKO and they want him to stress, because maybe this is the type of title fight champion they hope to crown with the league, the Dana White League next year, where they're going to have, they've talked about how they want Ward versus Gotti type fights, and they want someone like Gotti who might not be the best in the world, but, he's just exciting. He should be their champ. Maybe that's what they're trying to set up. I'm not sure, but I don't get what Max was. I don't know. I honestly, I was at a loss for a lot of the stuff Max was saying in between the fights. During the fights, he was mostly pretty good. But again, in between the fights, he said a lot of shit that was just shit.
Do you think that he could have had a bug put in his ear to push the BMF, because maybe they would like to set up one of those spectacle events with a BMF title as, one of those tentpole events they were talking about?
I mean, possibly. I mean, I do think there's a possibility that someone put a bug in his ear. Like I said, did he talk to someone? Is this some idea that someone else floated to him and wants him to the press? Because he was so adamant about it so many times. It's like, did you come up? Why are you so obsessed with the stupid belt?
Yeah. Now, Max also did like a Herculean level of bootlicking of Dana's shoes in a presser the day before the event, to which Canelo aggressively clapped back against. What's your take on Max Kellerman's just gross display?
Well, I think he's happy he has a job. I think that was it's hard for me to knock. We mock the bootlickers and the shills and stuff, but you got to put yourself in their shoes sometimes. This is their profession, and this is the only one offering them the chance to do their profession. Now it's disgusting, but that's why do you think so many people in the media cave in, the MMA media, why the national media? Because when someone has the power that the TKO has over the industry, or Turki Al-Sheikh in boxing, they fall in line because their livelihood depends on it. But I had a lot of problems with his comments. I guess there is some truth to the fact that UFC and MMA, not MMA really, just UFC, have displaced something about boxing, especially recently, last year and a half, when boxing has been taken off all the major networks in America broadcasts. So there is a point to say about that. He could have made a point, but the whole idea that Dana White is going to make it to turn the NBA or NFL of boxing, I would like to talk to Max about that, because how do you imagine an NFL or NBA of boxing working? Those are teams in a league that has a commission. We're talking about one promoter that just dictates things. It seems to be very different. And so I'm not sure what you mean by you're going to have an NBA. You should be excited to have an NBA boxing. I just don't. It's not going to be an NBA boxing. It's going to be a promoter running everything. So I get that it's the promoter that's paying your check. So I can understand some excitement on that level. But the amount of excitement he had beyond that seemed, I guess I would disagree with his statements on there. I'm not sure he's completely thought through this. I know a lot of boxers bring this up, that Dana White, we need a dictator and stuff. And it's like, you need a dictator because you want someone to just tell the fighters to do exactly what you want to happen. But do they want a dictator? That's the question.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!